Hello, I'm Jackie Fox, and welcome to my show. Today I'm going to be talking about some independent research on the coronavirus's effects on young people. But first I want to say that there's a lot of healthy media skepticism going around right now. I like to think of it as a very healthy distrust. Now, some of it's going in the wrong direction, but I think it's very realistic to look at this situation, watch small businesses going under left and right, and big box retailers like Amazon and Walmart thriving under government bailouts. Places like Shake Shack eating up the loans and bailouts that were intended for small businesses, while many small businesses are being turned away by their own banks. That is a problem. And on a certain level, we should be protesting it. Maybe not out in the streets, but it is something that is perfectly logical to be angry about. And it's from this distrust that I started doing my own research. See, I started to be skeptical of this idea that the coronavirus just started in Wuhan, China in 2020. I mean, first of all, COVID-19 is named as such because it was discovered in 2019. And I had an experience with it back in December. And the more I talked about this experience with people, the more I heard other people saying the same thing, that they had it in November, December, January, that they hadn't been able to get tested for it, or they had it before people were talking about it and didn't know what it was. So I decided to take advantage of that opportunity and start interviewing those people. And I have interviewed at this point 12 people between the ages of 26 and 39. And it's been really shocking how similar their experiences are, and I feel like I've learned a lot from it. Now, of course, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a statistician or anything like that, and even if I was, 12 is a pretty small sample group, so take all of this with a grain of salt. But I thought it would be interesting to share my findings so far, because this has just been really strange, and it really causes me to rethink the way that I think about this virus and how it affects people my age. So, for people who were in the 26 to 33-year-old group, they didn't have any symptoms until the breathing problems hit. And they seemed to hit all at once, just all of a sudden. Like sore throat, difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, pain in the lungs and throat, a pressure on the chest, all of these things. But what's kind of surprising is that for all of those people, which was about 7 or 8 people out of this, those symptoms only lasted for about 24 hours. For people who were a little bit older, 33 to 39, which was the smaller section of my group, they got sick for about 3 or 4 days before, usually around 3 days exactly. Just kind of stuffy, it felt like a cold was coming on, and then the breathing difficulties started. Those lasted from anywhere from 24 hours to about 48 hours. It tended to be longer in people who were closer to 39 years old. And other than that, there was actually one commonality among all of these people, and that is that they kept getting sick afterwards. Even after the breathing difficulties went away, even after the virus cleared from their system, a lot of these people who were telling me that they got sick in December and November and January, they kept getting sick afterwards. Not necessarily the coronavirus, but they got really bad colds. Things that were just kind of out of character for the way their body usually handles this stuff. And they would have like one for a couple of weeks out of every month, and then they get better, and then they get sick again. And what this seems to indicate, and this is backed up by a lot of studies, is that the coronavirus attacks our immune systems, which is something that the media isn't talking about and something that I've talked about before. And this is definitely something that we need to keep in mind, because even if the immediate effects of the coronavirus on young folks our age is, only lasts for like 24 to 48 hours, you got to wonder what happens over the next couple of months. I mean, we're seeing that a lot of the people who are dying of coronavirus at any age aren't dying from the immediate effects. They're dying in the weeks and months after. And this really correlates with this idea that there's going to be a second wave that's going to coincide with our flu season, which is going to make these immune effects even more dangerous. So if there's one storyline that I want to make you question, it's being repeated a lot, it's that young people are just getting away scot-free. that you're safe, that you don't have to worry about getting this because it's not really going to have any symptoms. Because even if those symptoms are short-lived, or even if you experience nothing else, it could make something that you catch in the months after so much worse. And that could get really dangerous as we enter the flu season. So that's just something I want you to bear in mind when you're thinking about, going to kind of an under-the-radar party or something and getting together with your friends. Because that is really something you have to take into account. We aren't as immune to this as we like to think we are. And there are effects beyond just the initial breathing problems. Out of the 12 people that I spoke to, 3 of those people actually have been tested and tested positive. The other 9, mostly because they got it earlier on before, there were any tests, before tests had even been developed. They weren't able to get tests. But among those 12 people, the symptoms were all basically the same. So it really makes me kind of feel like those 3 that did test positive kind of checked the rest of the group. It makes it seem like all 12 of them actually did have this. So if there's one thing that I want to encourage caution, even if you're young, because there are ways that this could hurt us going forward. And just to kind of theorize a little bit, and again, take this with a big old healthy Salt Bay level of salt, it seems like our immune systems attack it faster. That's why we get over it faster. But our immune systems get attacked back by it faster, because the only person out of this whole group actually was the 39-year-old that kind of got over it and didn't get sick immediately again after with a cold or a respiratory infection or a sinus infection or something like that. And this really jives with my own personal experience, because I have had sinus infections, respiratory infections, and ear infections in the 4 months since I had it. I still have a fucking ear infection. It's been like a month. It started in my right ear. That lasted for about 3 weeks. That's more or less gone now, but I still feel it getting a little uncomfortable. But now I'm starting to experience pain and discomfort in my left ear, so it's moved all the way across my head. And that's just something that we need to be aware of, that even if you have no symptoms, it could be doing kind of invisible damage to your immune system that you might not recover from within a series of months. So a couple things that I do want to talk about, just to give you a little bit of hope here at the end of the video, is how you can help your immune system recover, especially if you've just recently been on antibiotics, which I was. So I've been taking a lot of probiotics and a lot of prebiotics. So there's a yogurt drink called kefir, which is really high in protein, which helps you rebuild a lot of these cells, but also has a lot of good probiotic cultures. It'll help rebuild your gut bacteria and boost your immunity. Vitamin C has been studied for this. It doesn't seem to help as much with the coronavirus, but it could help build your immune system back up afterwards. So vitamin C is a good thing to take. There's also some relatively new research that shows, like, there's a really interesting way that you can take a shower to build your immune system. So you take like 3 minutes of a shower as hot as you can, then you turn it as cold as you can for 1 minute, and then another 3 minutes of hot, another minute of cold, and you just kind of keep doing that for about 15 minutes. And what this does is it shocks your body between hot and cold, and this effect can actually help build up your immune system. It's really similar to the ideas of using a sauna, using a sweat lodge, or using a sweat lodge and then jumping into ice cold water, which is a time-honored tradition that a lot of like Eastern medicine has said is really good for the immune system. And there's actually some scientific basis to that now. Other probiotics that you can take, there are probiotic capsules that you can buy. Those seem to be pretty helpful. Kombucha is pretty cool. If you don't so much like the taste of kombucha, you can mix it with like orange juice or with tea to really kind of cut the sour flavor of it and make it more palatable. Another thing that I've been doing, I've been eating a lot of like kielbasa and cabbage soup. Cabbage itself is a prebiotic, which means that it's basically a fuel for those gut bacteria. It's a fuel for them that helps, if you're taking probiotics, which are putting the bacteria in your gut, this will help them thrive and flourish. And I like to combine that with kimchi, which is a Korean fermented cabbage, because I figure if it can ferment cabbage, then if I put it in there with more cabbage, that's going to be the bacteria that's designed to work on that. And it's helped. The ear infection hasn't accelerated as fast as it did initially. That could be because I've put more time in between me and having the coronavirus, and that's allowed things like T cells to rebuild. Or it could be an effect of the probiotics and the crazy shower regimen. I'm not really sure, but it seems to be beneficial to me. So if you're having issues with your immune system for any reason, those are some things to think about. And beyond all that, I would like to put out this call. If you also experienced some of the symptoms like what I described, if you didn't experience any symptoms, but say for a period of time between like February and now, you've just been getting sick really regularly, if you feel like you usually have a strong immune system, you usually don't have any problems with flu season or with cold season and stuff, but you're having them this year, first, you might be interested in seeing if you can find an antibody test near you, but I'd also be interested in hearing from you. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on Facebook, however you can. I would love to hear your feedback and, exactly what you've experienced to help me expand my research base on this and try to kind of verify it a little bit better. Because again, 12 is kind of a small sample size. So I need to speak with more people about this before I can really start drawing conclusions. But I found it really interesting how predictable all of this was, how it affected different age groups in different ways, even among my study, and how all of these people who came to me that said they hadn't been tested because they had it before the tests and they just haven't been able to find tests or whatever, how their experiences lined up almost exactly with the people who've had it more recently that I interviewed who have been able to get tests and have been able to test positive. So I think that all of this together says that, maybe this didn't start in Wuhan, China. Maybe we don't know where it started, really. Maybe this has been going around for a while and that was just the first time that it had a major outbreak. And you might be asking yourself, well, why didn't we have outbreaks in other places in the country or in the world? Why was it Wuhan, China? Wuhan, China has a huge population density, which helps these things spread. But in addition to that, they're one of the most polluted cities in the world. And inhaling all of that pollution is kind of something that weakens the body and the lungs, makes you more susceptible to this type of thing. So Wuhan, China is like exactly where you would imagine this thing would really catch fire, because there's all these environmental effects that are really pouring gasoline on that fire. So, in the end, it may not be, as Donald Trump likes to call it, a Chinese virus. It could have come from other places. And also, at this point, I've only been speaking to Americans, mainly people living on the East Coast, but I also have some people in that study that were on the West Coast in California as well. I'd be interested in talking to people all over the world and hearing your experiences. I would be interested to know if some countries are having a generally different experience of this than we are, because there are some theories that there are as many as 3 or more strains of this going around, with different strains having different ability to be transmittable, being more or less contagious, and some of them having more or less severe symptoms. So I would find it really interesting to hear from people all over the world about this. Just if you feel like you may have had it, feel free to reach out to me, because there are other things I didn't mention about this that would help me kind of verify for you. And I'm no replacement for a test, of course. And again, I'm not an expert. It's all just speculative, but it would be interesting to hear from you guys. So thank you so much for that. Also, I've realized over these last couple live streams, because I haven't been doing like the normal outro to my videos because I can't really edit it in. I haven't been referencing my Patreons as much. I do have a new patron. I want to give a big shout out to Artemis Rivers. Thank you so much for joining my Patreon at $5 a month. I really appreciate you so much. And I do want to say thanks for ordering a hat as well. That's going to be a big help to the effort to get my mother's house rebuilt. Right now we're having a little bit of trouble with Amazon in shipping in some new yarn, because I don't know why the local not convenience stores, but like supermarkets haven't restocked the yarns that we're using, but we're trying to order it right now. We're having a little bit of trouble getting that shipped, but that will be coming soon. And if anybody else wants a hat, we do have some that are pre-made. The reason I can't get Artemis hat, or I have to make Artemis hats from scratch, is that it's actually a hat for a little kid, and we didn't make any in kids sizes. But if you're an adult and you want one in adult sizes, we do have many finished hats that might be able to work for you. Just reach out to me and you'll be helping a woman have a nice home. So I really appreciate you for that, and you get a nice hat out of the deal. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be back as soon as I can be. Hopefully within the next couple of days, my hard drive is going to be arriving, and I can start working on the more edited videos that I want to be doing, like my normal content usually is. And I appreciate all of you for sticking around and sticking with my channel during this time, when I've kind of had to shift to a more low-tech, low-editing form of getting my message out. I really appreciate your loyalty, and thank you for coming with me on this ride.